Crowdsource the Truth Forever is out of Facebook or YouTube jail. So we're back on the air with Manny Grossman. Manny, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And I mean, people might get the impression that maybe you and I haven't spoken since last week. But of course, you and I are in regular communication. And
Correct.
we're just talking about how, for people maybe haven't seen this segment before, and for people who, I don't know why they wouldn't be, but for whatever reason might not already be subscribed to the Manny Grossman YouTube channel, you are leading an historic crowdsourced investigation into the remaining unsolved mysteries of the Son of Sam murders. The channel's doing really well. You've cracked 3,000 subs.
Whoa. That's new.
Yeah, I was excited to see that. And you've been doing
Cool.
some fantastic interviews, coming into contact with the historic figures that are involved, including survivor Carl Denaro. And you've got a breakthrough to announce today right out of the gate.
Well, I got a couple. First of all,
so let me hold for a second, because I want to make sure everybody knows where to see the show. We're constantly being pursued. I think you're starting to see this, where as you start to really have an impact, people try to knock you off the path, and that's happening a lot in social media. People can watch Crowdsource the Truth on rumble.com/user/CS the Truth, and we should be live on Rumble right now. Not quite yet. Sometimes it takes a moment for it to get started. So there we go. We're live. This is a great way for people to watch, Manny, because, you know, the type of information that you have been uncovering, and as I get deeper into Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil, there's a long history of a lot of people, and I'm not talking about Maury necessarily, but there's a lot of people who don't want this information to come out.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
I think we're definitely starting to make some people nervous out there. But on the other hand, we are opening up some psychic scabs here. That's we're picking at this barely healed scab over Lake Avenue in Yonkers, and people are starting to come out. Okay, we're making some amazing breakthroughs. So just a couple updates for the crowd. First of all, I just want to thank Jason again for allowing me this opportunity every week. What an amazing privilege. Now, you guys in the audience, this amazing audience of ours, I have not had a video come out in the last couple of weeks. There's a reason for that. We're sort of consolidating behind the scenes. There's some amazing things happening behind the scenes that, of course, are going to take the quality of research up a step come July. And again, I just didn't want to put out any fluff or crap. I don't want to start being seen as a person who just puts out anything just to put a video up. So patience. There's some real exciting stuff. Just a couple things that have happened just in the last 3 days alone. Number one. So I said it before about a psychic scab being picked off of Yonkers. Well, we finally have made a breakthrough with a person has gotten in touch with me. And of course, as I promise all people who get in touch with me, if you do not want to be identified, you will never be identified. The only people who will know about you are me. And if you give me permission, I'll share your name with my team. So this person chose, for the moment, not to be identified. However, I am working on this gentleman. This is a person who is incredibly important to us as Son of Sam researchers, not necessarily for the crimes themselves, okay? Now, we have to understand that there's a lot of parallel research going on at the same time. There are people who are interested in the process angle. I'm not one of those. There are people who are interested in the Manson angle. I'm not one of those. There are people who are interested strictly in the shootings themselves and the victims. I am one of those. However, my main interest lies in Yonkers itself, particularly with the years 1959 to 1976. Why? Because I'm a historian, I'm a sociologist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a person interested in the backstory of things. And this cult did not just come out of nowhere in 1976. It had been spawned from the Lake Avenue Business District in Yonkers since at least the 1950s. And we have finally met a person who came forward because of this series and this series alone. He came forward, identified himself, and this is a person who's very important. Why? Because he's the go-between. This person was intimately familiar with Maury. He knew Maury on a first name basis. They went to school together, Maury Terry. They were neighbors. They were friends. They spoke on the phone quite often. But what makes this person incredibly unique to us as researchers is this person also knew, he told me, 13 of the 22 disciples of hell. He knew them.
Whoa.
Yeah, he knew them intimately. He grew up with them. This guy told me, Manny, you're on point. Sacred Heart High School was the breeding ground for the 22 disciples of hell. Gorton High School, the breeding ground for the 22 disciples of hell. So this guy is now on our team. I've made him an unofficial member of our research team. He said to me, so Manny, what am I going to get paid for this? I said, you're on par with all of us, buddy.
Right.
Exactly nothing.
Volunteer crew. But let's talk about that for a second, Manny, because it's very generous of you to do that. And, you know, you mentioned before that you haven't released a video in a few weeks. You've been doing videos each week here on Crowdsource the Truth, where we're certainly kind of doing a summary of what you've been reporting and delving into some new stuff. So the reason why you've had to do that is that you're still running your landscaping business. And it's basically impossible to dedicate all your time to doing such a high quality YouTube channel with lots of investigation and all the time that goes into that without being paid. And I understand where this person you're talking about is coming from. People who sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth help me keep this going. So I think you should let people know about your landscaping business if they want gardening lessons or if they have a property that needs your services.
Thank you, Jason. I always appreciate that. Well, maybe we'll hit this at the end, but right now, if you just go to mannygrossman.com, I have private Zoom gardening classes that I run. Now, I was a teacher for 10 years at New York Botanical Garden. I was their busiest and most popular teacher. I started with one class 10 years ago, and I ended with 11 different classes I was teaching. My reviews were off the charts good. Why did they fire me? Because a Karen called and complained that I spoke about face masks in a negative way. A Karen called and complained that I talked about Bill Gates. So the leftists at NYBG did what they're so good at, and they canceled me. So anyway, I started my own school where I teach the exact same classes that I taught for the prestigious New York Botanical Garden to rave reviews for many years. And whatever you see on there at any given time are the classes that I'm offering. I have 6 different classes, but these are the 2 that are offered now. I have a fundamentals of gardening class and a plant identification class. And so you could see all that there. And of course, I also do landscaping as well. I've been luckily, thank God, even though I'm not a religious person, I do use that term. I have been clawing my way back from the abyss. Luckily, I'm reaching conservative gardeners. So, hey, you know, I would actually rather be around people of my own tribe. So if you're a conservative, if you're a progressive libertarian, and you're sick and tired of taking gardening classes from these leftist weirdos, yeah, you got me. And it'll be one of the best classes you ever took.
So many people are spending more time at home.
Correct.
This is a great way, even if they've never thought about gardening before. If you have a backyard, you plant some vegetables, learn about plants, and
get off the grid.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, gardening is gangsta. All right. So we're going to take it. So anyway, yes, thank you so much for that, Jason. But let's get back to the material. So I want to just real quick tell you, this guy gave me some incredibly important information. Now, there's some stuff he told me that I cannot get into. It's too sensitive at the moment. However, he did update me on Wallstrom, Karen Wallstrom, and he gave me a few things. For one, he confirmed to me that she was considered the hottest teacher at Sacred Heart.
That was sort of obvious.
Yeah, he said that the rest of the teachers were nuns. They were all old and dried up and pruned up. and that Karen came in looking like, he said, a Vogue model.
A
So her,
model, yeah.
yeah, so her classes were very, very popular and people loved taking her classes. But he gave me a little different spin. Well, first of all, he told me that everybody in that neighborhood, from the minute that they heard that she was dead, nobody thought it was suicide. Not one single solitary person in Lake Avenue, Sacred Heart, thought that it was a suicide. In fact, the quotes that generally were the most common were "no effing way." That's what was said. He told me that he gave me a little different spin on her murder, though. He told me that two girls at Sacred Heart. Now, we have heard of two girls before at Sacred Heart in relation to her story, that they were two girls that lured her up to Vault Hill that night. This guy said to me that, and I'm not sure whether he was talking about the same two girls, but there were two girls at Sacred Heart that were starting to get involved in prostitution.
Jeez.
And that these two girls,
Man, in high school
and in Yonkers, 1965.
Wow.
Listen, I got another story for you. This guy told me, it's going to blow your minds. He said that Karen was trying to help them out, and that somehow or other she got entangled with this group in trying to help these people out, and somehow or other that led to her death. So
But that makes a lot of sense, right? She's a teacher. She knows these students. She's younger than most of the other teachers. She can kind of relate to them. Mm-hmm. These are troubled students, and they're getting into drugs and prostitution, and she's at the Catholic high school trying to straighten them out. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes. What doesn't make sense, of course, is why she was at Van Cortlandt Motel, but prostitution and drugs and seedy motels go hand in hand. Now, we speculated last week that maybe she was getting involved. The answer, the real answer is, it's still a mystery. What is becoming clearer and clearer, though, is that the Karen Wallstrom was as powerful as I thought it was going to be. This was the breakthrough topic for me, where I realized this is the story that's going to get people talking. And it's taken a few months, but it has definitely got people talking. Now, check out this other story. This is gonna be a mind blower. 1961, Sacred Heart High School. Okay. So there's a new priest that just comes into teaching at Sacred Heart. His name was Father, I just got to go to my notes here, Father Lawson, Lawson. He starts teaching there in 1959, okay? By 1961, Father Lawson is dead. We don't know exactly how he died, but he's buried at Sacred Heart Cemetery. They have a cemetery for their priests there. In 1961, Jason, Father Lawson's body was dug up, body parts were removed, and these body parts were used in satanic rituals in the neighborhood, according to this contact that just got in touch with me. Yeah. So in 1961, this stuff was going on, guys, in this one, innocent looking neighborhood in Yonkers. And the Father Fenian Sullivan, the guy who, Father Fenian, he was the head of Sacred Heart. He was an extremely powerful person. Apparently, he just came in, he covered it all up. He said, nobody is to know about this ever.
They love covering stuff up.
They love covering stuff up.
Let me ask you real quick, Manny.
Yeah, sure.
Because when you talk about stealing bones and things like this, there's always topics that come up, and there's going to be things today where people are going to be like, oh my God, how do you not know that? And the answer is, no one person can know everything, and you've got deep knowledge on subjects that I know nothing about. I might have knowledge that you know nothing about. That actually is the whole point of a crowdsourced investigation. Did you know that the secret society, the Skull and Bones at Yale, where George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush were all members, they stole the skull and various bones from Geronimo and even got sued by his family, and in court they said, yeah, they stole it, but nothing happened.
Yes, Jason, I did know this, in fact, because even though I am a conservative and a libertarian, back in the 90s and early 2000s, one would have called me a liberal. I didn't change. Those people did. Okay.
Right.
So I hated the Bush family. I knew all about their evil crap going back to the Franklin cover up. I knew all about 9/11 as an inside job. I knew all about CIA, drugs, Iran Contra. I mean, I was already well versed in this by 2001. So yes, I knew about this many, many years ago. And it was one of
Sounds
those
similar.
things that it does kind of sound similar. Jason, give me a second. I just got to turn my light on. It's getting a little dark in here.
Sure, no problem.
There we go. Got to look good for the camera, right?
Yes, it's all good.
All right. So listen, and I got another. So that's this guy. Now, this gentleman who has now become part of my contacts up in Yonkers, he also has a friend. This friend also knew many of the disciples of hell, and this friend grew up right across the street from none other than the Carr family. So he's coming on board. I'm meeting with those two guys on Friday, most likely. We have a tentative date to meet up, and they have not yet agreed to go on film with me. But I'm working on it. Guys. So we'll see what happens. In either case, if they don't agree to go on film, I'm still going to get amazing information that I can use. I just can't identify them. But this stuff is coming in. Now, the second thing that happened today, just this morning, and I can't go into too much detail, unfortunately, because we're dealing with sensitive topics and people who really want their privacy. But the sister of a Son of Sam victim who has until today been completely silent about their experience. I will not say male, female, or anything, but the sister of a Son of Sam victim has been watching the shows, watching our videos together, and also the videos that I put out on my channel. And she emailed me today saying that her sister is definitely like very interested in this video series, and is also like, it's just blowing her mind because they never thought like that any of this stuff was other than the official story. So we're even starting to get to change actual victims' minds. So a lot of really interesting things are happening. Like I said, the psychic scab is being pulled, and there's all sorts of stuff bubbling up. So it seems like we're getting it. And the quality of research come July is going to be just stepped up a notch. So I'm really excited for it.
We're going to dig into all this stuff. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but people need to understand that there's a bit of a delay, and sometimes I want to get an idea in there. You and I were having a conversation right before we started, and we were both remarking at how victims and people from the neighborhood and everything are coming forward now. And it's a bit sort of like, hey, this is amazing. Why is this happening? I think there are a number of reasons. And first of all, you are the main reason, Manny. You've got integrity and enthusiasm, and I think you're doing this for the right reasons. And I think the same things that attracted me to wanting to do this project with you also give other people confidence in you. I think the fact that you live in the proximity of where all these crimes took place, you and I were little boys when this was going on, but you were much more aware of it because of just your, personal proximity to it.
Correct.
And this interest that you developed in the 90s, I really knew nothing about this at all, other than the most peripheral knowledge. I knew who Berkowitz was, that there was a talking dog involved. I didn't know anything about the Carr family. I didn't know anything about the details of all this stuff. I had never even heard of Maury Terry. And I want to be very clear to everyone who might have the impression that I'm somehow trying to bust Maury Terry or rag on Maury Terry. That is not it at all. I'm just coming to this with absolutely no preconceived notions whatsoever. I didn't know any of these people. I didn't read the book. I haven't developed a theory over years. The most interesting aspect to me is that as I listen to you and Carl Denaro and some of the historic interviews and all of this stuff, and even Maury Terry, I'm listening to the book, The Ultimate Evil, on Audible, and there's just things in it that make me, like, for instance, I'm up to the part of the book where they've just revealed that John Carr's head was blown off so that it was difficult to identify the body. I had no idea. This just further deepens my belief that that was not him. They said he was 2 inches shorter.
I have something for you. Go ahead. So
well, they couldn't identify the teeth. It's like they just guessed. Someone said this is him.
There was a ton of stuff like that. The body was 2 inches shorter. It had a tan lines, meaning that whoever that
It's not
was
him.
wearing
Sorry to
shorts.
interrupt
Now,
again, but you just hit it. So Maury says, "Oh well, this makes it unlikely that it would be somebody in like North Dakota in February." It's like, hold on a second now. That makes it virtually impossible, because unless he's going to a suntanning salon, which did that even exist in
didn't even
1976?
exist.
Right.
No.
There's no
78.
way that was him.
Well, it's very possible, and I was willing to go to believe either or, especially after reading the book, because Maury Terry does say, my personal belief is that it's him, but it's always possible that it was a body switch. This body switch thing was very interesting to me as a researcher. I have 2 pieces of independent information, okay, about John Carr and his whereabouts that both corroborate from 2 different people. Okay, the first is this guy who I always talk about in my video series. I've spoken to about him several times over the course of several videos. It was a guy who I met in the course of my working life. In those years, I was I've done a lot of things in my life, but one of the things I was doing in those years was running sound for a synagogue. Okay, and that's all the information I'll give about the place. And I met a guy there who worked there who knew Wheaties. He called him Wheaties. He knew Berkowitz. He called him Berkey. This guy knew way too much stuff than he should have. And I was convinced that this guy was a shooter. Now
he was working at the synagogue as well. You were like a Hamish or Rhodey over there.
He wasn't Jewish.
Oh, but he was working there.
He was working there. Yeah, he was like an usher, like a janitor type of dude.
See, but I'm interested in that because there's so many religious crossovers where Berkowitz, who is obviously Jewish, is like a born-again Christian or something.
He was
like
he was that in the army, and then he became that again in jail. And then, of course, you have Norman Silberstein, you have Howard Weiss. It sounds like a B'nai B'rith convention, the Son of Sam cult.
Right.
But let me finish this up because I tend to forget if I don't finish. So this guy told me that John Carr was in New Hampshire. Okay, he just said it. It just flowed off his tongue. Now, this guy that I just told you about, this contact from the neighborhood who just recently got in touch with me, that had a conversation with him yesterday, in fact, he told me of a conversation he had with an individual from the neighborhood who was not this person, who was not the other guy that I told you about, the usher from the synagogue, and that person just very matter-of-factly told him, yeah, Wheaties is in New Hampshire. So that's 2 independent people who did not know each other, who were not in cahoots, who were talking. One guy said this to me in 2003. The other guy said it in 2020, that John Carr ended up in New Hampshire somehow. So make it of it what you will, guys. All I'm doing is reporting what I'm hearing on the street.
What was his actual middle name? His middle name wasn't really Wheat.
Charles.
That was just a nickname. Right?
Charles. Yeah. So another nickname of him was
today?
JC. He was born in 1946. So he would be, 76, 75 years old?
There is a John C. Carr who's got an address history in Maine.
I doubt he'd be using his real name.
That I've noticed, right. And this has been reaffirmed by just things that are sort of even just little things that occur in the book might trigger something in my attention that other people don't notice. There's something that I've become aware of over the past 3 or 4 years called identity duplexing. And it seems to be easily achieved in the internet age by doing things like, applying for credit cards or getting a cell phone. And, you can make a spelling error on your name that somebody at the AT&T store doesn't notice when you flash your driver's license, or you get somebody else's driver's license who looks like you, and you get a cell phone and you create a cell phone account. And you start setting up email addresses with that, and YouTube things and Facebook things. Now you start making all these footprints and fingerprints all over the internet, and you can create alternate identities for yourself with a misspelling of your middle name or your first initial and your full name for your middle name. There's ways that you can create these different iterations of yourself, and they mention in the book that Michael Carr was getting credit cards under different identities. So clearly these guys were hooked into identity duplexing back then, and I can't go into great detail about this, but
Hmm.
I told everybody recently how I called the product manager at Ford to get the parts for my
Correct.
car.
Yes,
So
and
when I call somebody like,
congratulations.
thank you. When I call somebody like that, I'm able to find them quite easily. Dershowitz, not that he's a good guy, but there are certain people who, when I search these internet databases, there are consistent things that I'm noticing that people who seem to want to hide are doing, and it's identity duplexing. Multiple
Hmm.
entries for the same person, different phone numbers, different addresses, slightly different ages, and they do this to obscure their identity.
So what are you saying?
I think that the cars were very involved in doing that.
It could be. Listen, as we discovered and as we discussed in my video, deep inside the car family, there's weird things associated with the cars. We have the mother, a corporal in the Marines. We have her living in a mess hall that was, according to a contact, a place where intelligence operatives lived. We have Sam Carr also in the military, them get it. I mean, not a big deal, although he was a little old. We have 33s all over this thing.
Yeah.
So
Berkowitz was in the military.
Berkowitz was the military. We have reports. I mean, it was Mae Brussel, so who knows how? But she was talking about experiments with LSD and turning people into assassins.
Well, and this is the
So
part that I think people are going to say, how did you not know that? But I'll tell you what, I never listened to Mae Brussel before you sent me that. And I agree, there were things that she said that were a little bit, maybe not
out there,
fully fleshed out. But also keep in mind, she's speaking to us in 1975 or
70,
76,
77, right after the arrest.
77, and she's talking about things about Lee Harvey Oswald where the Zapruder film was like not even seen by that many people in 1977.
Right.
It was not released to the public until 1975, and there were no VHS machines around then. If you didn't see it on Geraldo Rivera, you would have no
Right.
idea that it played.
Right.
So
I mean,
many people
listen,
were unaware of that.
when I first started this, there was a viewer who said, you got to listen to Mae Brussel. And I went and listened to it a little bit. And to me, it sounded like balderdash, poppycock, whatever old
She's
fashioned
onto
term you want to
something.
use. But there's certain things that she might be onto. So I went and listened to it again yesterday. And still, most of it to me sounded a little iffy. But the whole Phoenix Project, creating assassins, LSD experiments.
What about
Also,
that? You don't buy that or you do?
no, I do buy that. And
Yes, that went
also,
on.
yes, and totally Project Monarch. And I also totally believe that a lot of the serial killers that were around in the 70s, it was like an operation. It was like a terrorist operation, and possibly these were all being run as intelligence operations. So Son of
But just to
Sam was in
flesh
the
that out for
mix.
people, because it's a difficult concept, and I listened to quite a bit of Mae Brussels after you sent it to me, and what she touched on that was most interesting to me, that also seemed most plausible,
Hmm.
is that there were psychological studies going on into the cause of violence at UCLA, and I think at McGill and various
Right. Oh, McGill's
universities.
like, yeah.
So they were studying violent behavior, and who the hell knows where that would go? I mean, we see how Anthony Fauci likes to study virology by resuscitating dangerous viruses.
Right.
Are there similar doctors who want to study violent behavior by first provoking violent behavior and then studying it?
Well, there's one doctor, Jason, that always seems to come up in all of these things, Dr. Jolly West, JollywEst. He seems to be everywhere, behind one of these serial killers, behind one of the, Joel and West, behind these weird psyops that occurred. And you want to talk about McGill psychology? I mean, that place was known to be like a place where they ran psyops, where they where they did all sorts of experiments on people, very vicious stuff. My sister went to McGill too, interestingly enough, but she was not a psychologist. No, I always think that people who study psychology are a little strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, this was certainly unusual psychology. The other thing I think that people need to, and I mean, this is part of the reason why I've encouraged you to, although I appreciate this concept of a heavily focused research project there in Yonkers where it all started, I certainly encourage people to keep their minds open because, Manny, I'm convinced that Son of Sam is just one element in a larger thread. And I think that this type of studying and training and everything? Because keep in mind, after World War II, the United States was, provoked in part to bring in these Nazi scientists because the
Operation
Soviet Union
Paperclip.
was captured. Right, they were capturing them. So there was a school of thought that figured, well, if we let the Soviet Union get all these Nazi scientists, they're going to get ahead of us. So if they're studying weird mind control stuff, we have to study weird mind control stuff. So it was this sort of self-propagating thing. And I think that there's something to that.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing, Jason. When I first started this, I was the Maury Terry. Maury Terry could do no wrong in my eyes in my first video. Although I had some slight doubts here and there. And as I went on and I learned more, of course, I learned what he left out of the book. That made me a little angry. I wanted to bring it to the crowd. But as I go on in this, I'm starting to wonder about the whole SOS thing. Was it an intelligence operation from start to finish? We do have evidence of one particular doctor in Yonkers. We're working on a video on this guy, so I don't want to say his name yet. But there is whispers of MK Ultra activity taking place on Lake Avenue in Yonkers in the exact years that we're talking about. So could this have been involved with this whole Operation Paperclip? Yes, definitely it could have been. We don't know for sure, but I'm starting to
Untermeyer
wonder.
was German.
Well, he was
Carr
American.
German. Well, but the descent.
Yeah, and the cars were more Ukrainian. They were more Russian. More Russian.
Ukrainians loved Nazis. You know that, right?
I actually don't. That's something that I have no knowledge about one way or the other.
There was a huge Nazi contingency in Ukraine, and I'm very suspicious of all these people. I also wanted to note for the audience that, right now, you and I are only slightly older than Maury Terry was when he was doing all of this investigation. So it's another interesting point with the whole baton being passed to you. I mean, somebody who's 60 or 70 and has spent most of their life with some kind of really disruptive gunshot wound maybe doesn't have the resources, energy, or mental state of mind to overcome all these fears and trauma to do this type of research. So I think, Manny, you are the right guy in the right place at the right time, and you're just breaking a ton of ground. So you've sent me a lot of material.
Thank you. Yes.
Let's get into that.
All right, for sure. All right, guys. So thank you so much for indulging me and Jason in that little intro. So today what we're going to be talking about is a little bit of a deeper dive into Catholics for Latin America, okay?
Yes.
Now, we want to just take a step back and bring it back to the two videos that I talk about this organization in and why I started talking about it in the first place. So several weeks ago, we were just me, Jess D, John Mitchell. At the time, it was just the three of us. Max had not yet joined the group. We were discussing things that went on in Lake Avenue. We were talking about different organizations that were different prominent people, doctors that might have been involved, certain names. And so this doctor's name, Dr. Robert Honorato, keeps on coming up in Son of Sam research. So we were looking up Dr. Honorato, and we realized that Dr. Honorato ran an organization called Catholics for Latin America, okay? Relatively innocuous sounding name. And of course, their mission statement was, we're going down to the poorest slums of Latin America, and we're going to be saving children, and we're going to be helping them. And we're going to be teaching them Catholicism at the same time. And we're going to bring them back to the United States and give them a better life. So of course, my mind, the way I think, right, is, okay, this is where they got the kids from for the rituals. Like, I just immediately went there because Honorato was the head of this group. It is purported that he was one of these prominent doctors who was one of the heads of the Son of Sam cult. It is alleged that David Berkowitz had his number, his private phone number in his phone book. And of course, it was across the street from this doctor's house that two kids were dug up by Brother John, and then they were dumped in the Hudson River. So I immediately saw Catholics for Latin America filtered through my particular brain as a front for the CIA, okay, doing multiple things. Now, can we just bring up real quick, it's a little out of sequence, but I want to bring up it says CIA shell. It's down towards the bottom. because before we get to the story, I want to bring the audience up to speed for people who may not know. It's called CIA Shell. Should be down towards the bottom, maybe the middle.
They kind of opened in a weird. Here it is.
Yeah. All right. So this is a great article that I found from. I don't know exactly what periodical it's from, but it looks like it could be the New Yorker or one of these magazines from the old days. The CIA and the foundations. Okay. Now, for those who don't know, the way that the elite do a lot of their evil stuff around the world is through these innocuous sounding front groups and foundations. Okay. Anytime you see the word foundation, you should be very wary. Okay. For example, the Ford Foundation. Okay. Everyone thinks the Ford Foundation is great. The Ford Foundation is actually one of these elitist groups that foment societal destruction. They were heavily involved in the Ocean Hill-Brownsville debacle in New York, which destroyed race relations in New York in the late 60s. And of course, that was probably the stated reason. So if you look up this article, and I'm going to put it up on my Twitter, is basically a little primer on how the CIA uses dummy groups, front groups, shell groups, in order to put a nice smiley face on nefarious activity. So there's one in here that's actually interesting. It's in the third column, Jason, about midway down. There's a foundation called the Cleveland Dodge Foundation right there. Cleveland Dodge is a guy who lives in my neighborhood. Well, he was a very wealthy guy who lived on Palisade Avenue. Guess who he was friends with? He was very, very good friends with Alfred Hunt Howell, who was one of the two names of a possible head of the Son of Sam cult, Mr. Real Estate.
Is that Mr. Real Estate? Yeah.
Correct. A potential one. We think it might be actually another person now, but Cleveland Dodge so all of these foundations you got to watch out for. All right. So when I saw Catholics for Latin America, immediately my mind thought of it. Now we're going to go into more reasons why this group is a little strange, but so Catholics for Latin America was what immediately went on my radar. So now let's go back to number one. So I'm going to tie this in, folks. Okay. So here we go. Here's another story from the epilogue of The Ultimate Evil, which is really where Maury put his best material. And it came out in the second edition, and it was all just like a few different paragraphs. So this was another very famous story that Brother John was another protagonist in. It's the story of the two dead kids that they dug up. Okay. So I'll just read it. A Yonkers judge and a couple of lawyers and doctors were involved in it then, meaning the Son of Sam, the cultic activity, rituals and pedophilia. They were all into sex with kids. Brother John recalled. Of considerable interest, he added, that he once helped remove two bodies from a then wooded area not far from Untermeyer Park. The location was across the street from the home of a doctor. Okay, a doctor whose Long Island summer home telephone number would appear in Berkowitz's records a decade later. All right, so now a story that doesn't give you much flavor. It talks about Brother John digging up two kids, and then, but it doesn't say anything else about it. Now, please let's go to number 3, Jason, because here is the story. Here's the rest of the story, okay? So now this I showed in one of my videos, but I think that it's so important that it behooves us to look at it again. And it's another example of where Maury Terry, for whatever reason, left out the best stuff out of his book. Okay, so now this was an email that Maury sent to Carl Denaro. Okay, now why do we have it?
So just remind us, who calls who Mr. Pickett? That's what...
Maury called Carl Mr. Pickett, and I think that
why?
I'm not sure, but I think that it was just inside jokes. I think that they were very involved in music.
I don't know about that. Social engineers love to change the names around so that if we find this 40 years later, we don't know who the hell he's talking about.
Well, we do know because Carl sent this to me, and Carl.
But
said
when
this
Maury wrote this, he didn't know about you or what would happen
True.
30 years from now.
True, and he did write strictly confidential. Now,
right.
But Maury's gone now, and this information is more important than him, in my opinion. All right, let's get past the Mr. Pickett. That might have been an inside joke. Carl's not here. I don't want to speak for him. Big day today. See the link, 180 Hudson Terrace. Now, 180 Hudson Terrace is the location of Catholics for Latin America. It's the thumbnail of today's video, okay? Note the Hudson View Christian Academy. It was Catholics for Latin America in the mid and late 1960s. Okay, so here's Maury Terry talking about the exact same organization that screamed out to me as a CIA front, all right? Then note how close that is to Lower Kingman Terrace, to the exact spot on that street where Brother John Paul said that the lot was, the lot where they dug up the 2 kids' bodies in 66 or 67. It was John Paul and another kid, he thought from Saunders or Yonkers High School. Those are just 2 Yonkers local high schools that were picked up and led by a Sal who worked downtown at the Sugar House. The Sugar House
What's
was
a Sal?
Sal was the name of the guy who led Brother John and this other person to dig up the bodies.
Oh,
So
just somebody named Sal.
Somebody named Sal, yeah, who worked at the downtown Sugar House. 2 kids, one in a blanket, the other in a sleeping bag, dumped in the Hudson River by the Greystone Railroad Station. It took me ages to discover what CFLA was and then where it was. And now we have the photo Brother John Paul himself took of what turns out to be 180 Hudson Terrace, dated 1967, to match the same exact time that he dug up those bodies. And I was told that the reason why he took that picture, that Brother John took that picture, was basically as a document, to a memento of like the digging up of these bodies and who was associated with it. So Brother John and Maury Terry were associating CFLA with the 2 dead kids and the Dr. Honorado, because Dr. Honorado was the head of Catholics for Latin America. So here we go. This could be a potential huge link in the chain to figuring out where these kids came from that were used in rituals. Now, the beauty of the crowd, okay? Crowdsourcing the truth, to use the great man's expression. This was exactly what I bid off of, right? I need you guys in the crowd to do this for me. Because I am actually not that great at genealogical research or looking up old articles and stuff like that. What I'm really good at is kind of collating it all, understanding it, and presenting it to the audience. So we got a ton of, since those videos came out, we got a ton of updated information on Catholics for Latin America that I wanted to bring to the audience today, to update them on this group, and also to ask questions. Okay, so now we have a bunch of articles here. What I'll do is I'll put them on my Twitter. It's looking like we might not be able to, they might not actually show up all that well.
I can read it probably more easily than you can, if you'd like me to do that.
Well, I think
we can give them to people on Twitter.
Yeah, just take the pertinent stuff out of this. This is just basically like what Catholics for Latin America do. This and Jason, that goes to number 11. So you could just like go through these. I mean, I'm going to put these up on Twitter for the audience to read. But if you read this particular article, and it's going to be from like 1 to 11, it's just essentially talking about what they do. How they go to this
Now See news service? Farm. Do you know what that is?
I have no idea. Maybe it's Catholic, Now Catholic or something. So now
let's just talk about this guy for a second.
Correct.
Tom Hollywood.
This is the name that we're going to start bringing up. Okay, now, Tom Hollywood, a 26-year-old ex-Marine from Sunnyside, Queens, who's on the permanent staff. All right, so we have military ex-Marines heading Catholics for Latin America.
But I thought he's from Argentina.
No, well, maybe you found that, but we had him living in Yonkers. The Sunnyside, Queens thing was new to me. But my question is, Tom Hollywood. I mean, it sounds like
ridiculous.
Doesn't even sound like a real name. And so we have a picture of Tom Hollywood here. It's number 12, Jason.
Yeah, and we've seen this guy before. We went into a little bit of research last week and found that so he's 26 in 1965 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd be like 70 now or whatever.
Right.
And we found another guy named Tom Hollywood, also associated with Catholics for Latin America, as I understand it, is now Catholic Services. What is it?
Go to number 18 and we'll find out.
But there's a Tom Hollywood who's like 40 now.
Yeah, and who's doing the same
in
job.
charge of it or something. All right,
Right.
here he is.
Here's the new Tom Hollywood. Catholic
So that's
Relief
weird.
Services. It's extremely strange, okay? Because it's like, who's named Tom Hollywood, first of all? I've never met a person whose last name was Hollywood, ever in my life, okay?
Right.
And then you have two Tom Hollywoods who are basically
and is this
doing
Junior? Are they related? Do we have? Because I spoke to somebody about this. I spoke to Charles about this, and he said that the truly proper way, if this is the son of the 1965 Tom Hollywood, he would be Tom Hollywood Jr. And then, according to Charles, for people who are very proper, when the senior passes, the surviving junior drops the junior and just becomes Tom Hollywood. So that's possible.
I put a lot of stock into what Charles says about that, because I've only met him once, and he was a very gracious gentleman to me. I met him that day when I was fighting down with Boombox Boy at Union Square.
Oh,
that was actually the first time you and I ever sort of met. But that's a fun video. But listen, Charles is the king of the wasps, and I say that complimentarily. So if he says things about if he says things about Junior or Senior, I trust what Charles Ortel.
But he doesn't know. He's not saying that this guy is Junior. He's saying that this could be, because the way Charles does research, and I really respect this, he will run something down so hard until it's a nub, and only then will he say, okay, I believe this is true.
Correct. No, I'm just talking about his assessment of what these people do with Junior and Senior when these people die. I mean, I put a lot of stock into Charles's
and by the way,
opinion of that.
Check it out. This guy is in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
I mean, maybe that's where he's doing his Catholic relief services, but I don't know. It just seems weird. I'm pretty sure that CFLA turned into Catholic Relief Services. Yeah. And then you have these two Tom Hollywoods. I mean, it just let's take a look at the old Tom Hollywood, and then let's look at the new one. Do they look at all alike?
I'm just taking us on a quick journey to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to see what the hell is going on over there. I don't know if that's as nice as Yonkers. But anyway, Addis Ababa, it seems like a possibility that Catholics for Latin America has expanded its reach to be Catholics for basically any impoverished region. But I would also point out, the book mentions that somebody associated with the Son of Sam went to Haiti. And people who are familiar with the Clinton Foundation and some of the crazy stuff that their associates have done will immediately think of Laura Silsby, who took 33 children out of Haiti, and Bill Clinton personally became involved in her criminal defense. It was a very weird situation.
Before you leave that, there's the old Tom Hollywood, and of course go down, because you see the number 33 in there as well.
Where?
Remember, right there, you pointed it out.
330, right.
Right. Okay, and then also we have Ed Butowski in this, who's like another identity duplexer.
Right. You're reminding me of all this stuff. Wait, let's go over this. So this article, the caption, I don't remember if we did this on the show or if you and I were on the phone.
No, we did.
Well, we should say it again. Edward Butowski, okay? It's an unusual name, Butowski, but now we've got that Texas investor, Ed Butowski, who is the guy who paid for the private investigator in the Seth Rich murder and is involved in all kinds of lawsuits and was represented by the same lawyer who represented Robert David Steele in Steele v. Goodman. Robert David Steele claims he's part of the CIA. I doubt that claim, but he says it.
Yeah, I don't know about it. I don't even know who Robert David Steele is. I mean, to me, he looks like he looks like an offender to me. But so listen, all right. So go back up to Tom Hollywood there. All right. So about as white as you can get. Guy looks like a classic CIA operative. These two dudes are looking at him like he's the latest incarnation of Christ.
But and this guy looks like Casper Weinberger.
Yeah, and the other dude looks like who is the guy from the Addams Family? Uncle Fester. Yeah. There's there's Uncle Fester from the Addams Family. These two dudes look like offenders as well, but I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there.
We don't want to go there.
We don't want to go there. But let's take a look at the new Tom Hollywood. Does this guy look related in any way? Take a look at the nose. Look how straight and long that nose.
No, bald, and at a pretty young age, he's totally bald, and his father has all that hair. Maybe, broad nose, This
it's
guy does not.
fatter nose, not as straight and
Right.
as Anglo. So I don't know, guys. 2 Tom Hollywoods. What are the chances? Doing the pretty much the exact same job for the for what I think is the same organization. All right, so that's weird. Okay, that's a little red flag raising to me. But let's look a little bit more at the old Tom Hollywood, because I think some of your viewers are going to find this article that we found rather interesting. We're going to get back to this picture in a few minutes. Go to number 13. Okay, now skip to 14. So this is an article that we found in some Catholic newspaper. Actually, I didn't find it. A viewer did. So now go down there in the bottom where it says Catholics for Latin America. Okay, so Thomas Hollywood. There he is again. Okay. The Long Island-born director of the Argentina branch of Catholics for Latin America will return to Buenos Aires. 3 days after his Bay Ridge appearance, the 26th former Marine received the Grand Cross and citation of the Eloy Alfaro Foundation from Governor Nelson Rockefeller himself. Rockefeller gives Hollywood the Grand Cross. The youngest recipient of this honor joins the distinguished previous honorees. So here we have Hollywood, okay, getting awards from a Rockefeller, all right, which is probably, to my mind, that's a little suspect. Maybe it isn't. Let's see what this what the next page says, number 15. Okay. President John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, Dwight Adlai Stevens. The course of Mr. Hollywood's life was changed on an evening in March 1963 when the then managerial trainee read a brochure from Catholics of Latin America. Brochure told of person-to-person programs developed to assist the poor in Latin America to achieve housing, sanitation, medical, food, and education. The CFLA, whose Yonkers office is at 180 Hudson Terrace, is made up of families and single men and women, right? So great, they could be spies who work to help the poor of Latin America. They all work without salary. And they also strive to involve the Latin America's upper and middle classes in their work. So, okay, so this group's going down, speaking to the elite of Latin America, and they're also dealing with the poorest of the poor in Latin America. I don't know. I mean, look, this all sounds very innocent and innocuous, but if you wanted to send spies down from the CIA to foment revolution, deposing leaders like the CIA did all over Latin America, it'd be great to send them down as missionaries. If you wanted to get kids from Latin America to use in rituals, it'd be awesome to get them out of the poorest slums. Okay, so the CFLA began in 1962 when several New York City area families heard of the terrible conditions of the people in the slums of Santiago, Chile. They began their own Peace Corps. The role of the CFLA is in contributions, mainly at $1 a month pledges. So they relied on people sending in $1 a month to run this entire organization, which owns a mansion in Yonkers, which later bought a 39-room mansion in Briarcliff Manor.
39?
Let's
93
go back.
is Thelema.
Let me just make sure I got that right. Go down to TECHO 2. It's at the bottom, TECHO 2, because Catholics for Latin America changed their name in the late 60s to Techo, which means roof in Spanish.
Ceiling, yeah.
That's way at the bottom. It's like the fourth from the bottom. Techo 2.
Okay,
right there.
Techo 2. There we go.
So after these people left 180 Hudson Terrace in Yonkers, directly behind the house of Dr. Robert Honorado, Hudson Terrace and Honorado's houses touched. Okay, so here's an old 39. So how do they afford buying these old mansions with people giving $1 a month, and they have to send tons of people down to Latin America and keep them housed and fed? Presumably they have to keep the kids that they brought up to from Latin America. They have to keep them housed and fed. And then they're buying 39-room mansions in very exclusive regions of Westchester County. There's just something that doesn't seem right about that to me.
And 180 Hudson Terrace, it's still there in Yonkers. You went there, right?
Correct. In fact, we should look at the property records for that because they're very, very suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, your team has been looking into that. It's very interesting because what I'm attempting to do, when you told me about this, is I'm trying to apply some of the techniques I've learned from working with Charles Ortel as far as doing a financial investigation of some of these organizations. Now, obviously, I'm nowhere near as adept in doing this as Charles Ortel is. And I think we should go back and make a very clear connection of how we got from Catholics for Latin America to Techo to Catholic Relief Services. But it's escaping me right now how we got there. But I did find today in a document that you sent me this EIN number that I've been looking for since you mentioned the thing. And so this is Catholic Relief Services. They're
Can I just
990 for
interrupt?
2019. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? See, guys, this is why Jason is a major ally in this Son of Sam research. Nobody's doing this, guys. Okay, I would never have thought to do this. Having Jason on the team is amazing. Carry on, Jason.
Thank you. And for people who think I'm trying to bust up Maury Terry, that's not it at all.
Forget those
I'm just
people.
questioning every aspect. Now, the thing that's weird about this, again, I want to go back and figure out how we connected this organization to Catholics for Latin America, because there is no record whatsoever in any official thing about Catholics for Latin America. And this
they
organization,
just don't exist.
Right, was formed in 1943, and in 2019, do you see this number? That's $1 billion.
That's $1 billion.
Okay? So if we start to come over here and look at the contributions and grants, this organization has received, in 2019 alone, $921 million.
Oh my God.
$328,831. So there's the one. Somebody's sending it in one at a time. And you're going to absolutely love this. I want to show you who the financial officer of this thing is. It blew me away. He's getting very well paid. Oh, it's James Bond. That's got to be his real name. There's no doubt.
So we have
Now,
Tom
this
Hollywood
dude-
hanging out with James Bond.
This dude, first of all, these are exorbitant salaries for officers in a nonprofit. $285,000 is the base for this guy. Then we've got, some, other expenses or other payments that he's receiving, where his total for the year came out to $330,000 something, which is interesting too.
Yeah, that's a little weird. In fact, I have Jason in this package of articles for you. They're articles entitled "Funny Numbers," and I did that specifically for you because they're articles about CFLA with these freaking numbers in them that we're finding everywhere. So we'll look at those afterwards.
And by the way, these are public documents that anybody can download. I got this from the Catholic Relief Services website. They're giving this out. And then separately, once I got the EIN, I went to ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer and did an advanced search, and I found the Catholic Relief Services 2020 independent audit. Now, again, this is like me giving Charles the manual to a computer program and asking him to figure it out. I'm aware this is a financial document, but I am not equipped to read this. We can go through this and, using the information that Charles has been talking about for the past 4 years, people can read this. And Manny, I'll send this to you and we can post this up for people to download. But you can go through all of this stuff and look at all kinds of things.
No, we definitely need to get the crowd involved in this. That's the whole point. So yes, today we're not coming out with smoking guns on CFLA. We're exploring this organization. How did this whole thing start? Well, it started with Jess D sending me an article, me putting 2 and 2 together, and then Carl seeing that I had put 2 and 2 together. He realized that Maury himself had realized something, had been suspicious of this CFLA. So then he hipped us to that. We came to CFLA before we even knew Maury was involved with them and was suspicious of them. So it's just showing how our research is of Maury Terry level research. And of course, his story about CFLA and the two dead kids, connecting the two of them, is starting to bring this whole thing together. Now, do you want to say something about this, Techo, or can we move on?
Well, again, we need to figure out exactly how all these things are connected, because I remember when I found that Catholic Relief Services, I was very confident that's connected, but now that I want to show it to people, I can't recall exactly how we got there. So we need to firm that up, because we do have this Foundation Familia Torres, which is saying Teco Foundation. They collaborated with Teco, an organization in Latin America. And when we start looking for these things, they're hard to find.
Yeah, and they all seem to be just weird,
like
old-looking websites. Yeah, and just strange stuff.
Again, I mean, look, when you're planting a garden, you don't just say, well, you know what? Forget everything I know. I'm just going to start throwing seeds over here and this kind of plant over here, and we'll throw a little water on it. There's techniques that people have developed that are successful, just like there's techniques for building anything. And when you get a good technique for doing something that's refined and effective, you don't stray from it. You use it, and it appears to be a template that is being used by a variety of different 501c3 tax-exempt corporations. And it's stunning to me that all this money is there.
I think this is a great segue into the property records of 180 Hudson Terrace, because, and they're on the property records 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're right there, those orange ones. So this is the property records directly taken from Yonkers itself. Now, this first one here, so this is of the CFLA headquarters. So this one's here, it's just standard stuff. All the property records look like this, okay? It just gives you the square footage, if it has any particular features. This looks pretty much normal, like, and by the way, this house was built by Stanford White, who was a very famous and well-connected architect, built so many of the famous buildings in New York City. So this is nothing, but notice how it's torn on the bottom. That's highly unusual. Somebody tore that for a reason. Now, here's the second page, totally blank.
Huh.
Completely
Give us some background on it being torn. Is that torn out of a book? Is this the piece that was torn off right here?
No. Go to page 1 at the bottom. Yeah, something's taped there. See how the page 1 at the bottom is torn? That page.
Yeah, but this looks like a torn piece taped onto it here at the top. You see this?
It could be, but go up to property record 1.
Assessment. Hang on, let me move you so people can see that. I saw property record 1, but right here where Manny was, we've got something that says assessment report, and then there's another piece of paper that appears to be torn off and taped over it. And it looks to me like it fits into that part that's ripped out. Okay,
fair enough. So let's go to property record 2, which is completely blank, which is highly unusual. I've seen a million of these now, and every one of these little things are filled out on normal households in Yonkers. Here's property record 3. One little entry, and the rest is blank, and the bottom is completely torn. Okay, and then here's property record 4. So there's more there, but giving no names of owners, no transfer, nobody, there's no names on there hardly. And certainly no names of who owns this place, who it was sold to, who bought it, and then what's up with the bottom? Why is that all torn? We have never in our property record searches, and we see property records all the time. One of the things Maury Terry was highly, highly interested in was properties in Yonkers, certain households. And so his team got very good at looking up these property records. None of them ever look like this, where they're blank, where they're torn, where there's just numbers on them and no names. So again, what were they trying to hide of 180 Hudson Terrace? We don't know. We're just bringing these questions up to the crowd. I think CFLA is extremely suspect. I think they were doing suspect things in Yonkers, and I think that they were bringing in untraceable kids from Latin America to be used in satanic rituals. I'm just making that accusation, okay? No, you could disagree with me, and maybe one day I will be proven wrong, but maybe I'll be proven right. I don't know.
You are alleging. I'm alleging information and belief.
Now there's
you believe
that I believe, correct. And I'm only saying it for me. I'm not saying it for Jess, for John, for Max, or for Carl. In fact, Carl doesn't want to be involved in this at all. I just want to put that out publicly. Carl's interest is in the shootings particularly his shooting, but in all the shootings and in the victims. Every one of us on this team has different interests. Carl has no interest in this whatsoever. He doesn't want to get involved in this type of stuff. He has a very specific niche. So this is what I'm into. There's here's another thing that's very suspect about this area, this as well. And I touched on this in one of our videos before, Jason, but here's the article. Go to gerrymandered area. It's just like 3 before the property records. There we go. So now here's an article that was sent to me by another person in the crowd, which I found to be extremely interesting. So gerrymandering, of course, is drawing out and carving out political districts. And sometimes it can get very strange the way that they carve out these districts. But in this particular gerrymander, this is the area that encompasses Honorado's house, Catholics for Latin America, and the street where they dug up the 2 dead kids. And it's right here in the middle. They carved out that little middle section right there out of this entire other area, and they broke it up into some weird districts, which people were scratching their heads if you read the article. Now, here's a real gerrymander, right? The article talks about how, like, this is weird. They didn't follow any natural lines. It's actually ridiculous. All right. Now, I got to get the rest of that article for you, but you can sort of see it there. It's so why did they do that? You go more towards the left so you can see the gerrymandered area.
I think there's always crooked business going on when they're gerrymandering stuff.
So why did they have this one section? And again, I'm not going to be able to answer this, but it's another little piece of circumstantial evidence, which means that something important was happening on this 3-block radius in Yonkers that whoever was involved in wanted to keep tightly controlled.
Brandy has found that the Gates Foundation gave $21.8 million to Catholic Relief Services in 2008.
Well, birds of a feather flock together. You have Epstein then directly involved because Gates and Epstein were buddies. Yeah.
With Bill Clinton and who's the Kevin Spacey?
Exactly. So I think that we're pretty much showing the audience here that we've gotten some more info on the CFLA. There's one other thing I want to show because we didn't show this last time. It's the thing that says Mex Kids. It's right. It's the next article down. This is the article where a survivor of satanic rituals talked about the kids used in the satanic rituals. Go to that red highlighted area up there where you see it's like red and highlighted. Question. Were these children, go over to the left a little bit, please. Scroll. No, I'm sorry. The other way. The other way. There we go.
Ah, there we go. That.
Were these children strays or were they the progeny of some of the participants of the ritual? Answer. They were mainly children who were of like unwed mothers and a lot of Mexican babies. I don't remember any black babies, a few white babies, but most of them were Mexican. And they were like babies of teenage mothers. I think the members of the cult paid the unwed mothers money while they were pregnant, sort of like keeping them around.
That sounds like prostitutes.
Yeah, and then they just buy the babies. I don't think that these mothers knew what it was for. I think they thought it was going to a nice white middle-class home, but there were a lot of Hispanic teenage mothers in maybe bad areas, poor areas that needed the money and didn't want the disgrace. Sounds like what Catholics for Latin America was doing. They were going down to the poorest slums of Latin America and they were taking kids.
But also Karen Wallstrom was dealing with teenage prostitutes. Who knows? Maybe they're giving drugs to these teenagers and getting them, who knows?
Listen, we're finding a lot of nasty stuff happened in Yonkers in that area. But
one other quick thing that a viewer in the chat wanted me to bring to your attention, Manny, is that we've got this guy, Jesse James Hollywood, who is an American former drug dealer who kidnapped and ordered the murder of Nicholas Markowitz in 2000. He was arrested in 2005.
Remarkably similar to Moskowitz, yeah.
I don't know who this guy is, but
Jesse James Hollywood, that just doesn't sound like a real name. No. But these are very strange. So let's look up more strange anomalies with numbers just to satisfy those of you. And by the way, people who are watching this, I really appreciate it. But I just want to let you know that I do not look at the chat bar when I'm doing interviews because I'll just be too distracted. I'll start typing and I want to be involved in the interview. So I'm not really seeing this. I got to rely on Jason to let me know. But so there's 3 articles here with funny numbers, or they're entitled funny numbers. Just go to funny numbers 1. And they're right there. There we go. So this one we've seen already, but it behooves us for anybody who hasn't seen it. So this is the Catholics for Latin America. Notice the number there. 2 of 22 Americans who spent the summer in Buenos Aires slums working with the poorest of the poor. I don't know exactly what it says in the next one, but 22. Where have we seen that number before? The
disciples.
22 disciples of hell.
Now, is this Tom Hollywood there?
It doesn't look like Tom Hollywood to me. No, I think that
Different
this is
hair.
an article. Yeah, I don't think that's Tom Hollywood. So now let's go to funny numbers 2. There was a number in here that was interesting. 66. 17 and 66.
Yeah.
Okay. Buenos Aires has one of 66 full-time members of Catholics for Latin America. Wouldn't a Catholic see that number and go, you know what? Let's make it 65. 66
Add
looks
one
a
or
little
take
weird.
one out, right?
Yeah. I mean, you would think, right? And then, of course, then you have their 17-room head residence in Yonkers. So the Yonkers was 17, which is a number which I think has some significance.
Well,
I'm not sure.
Like the 17th letter of the alphabet, right?
Well, maybe, who knows? But or you can add it up and it becomes an 8. And these people love 8s, they love 1s, But the 66 was the thing that got me in that one. And then go to funny number 3, because there's something in there that I found as well. Dwyer's 44. Dwyer 44. Founded Catholics for Latin America. Okay, so again, I'm having fun with this. I don't think that there's any real significance there, but there's a number 44. We have 44, 22, 66. Tom Hollywood's meeting people at 3:30. I mean,
the 44 is significant, Manny, because they spend a lot of time in the book talking about how the 44 caliber Bulldog is such an unusual gun. And when you think about the different murders, he's just walking up to somebody's car and shooting at them from like 2 feet away. Why does he need a 44 caliber gun? He could have used a 38, a 22, could have used anything, and he would have really injured people, like 9mm.
Right. I mean, I don't know. So there was something significant about the number 44 to these people, apparently. So, listen, guys, we really need to do some deeper dives to the extent that it is possible. We need to now start looking more into the CFLA. On that note, there's an article here, which I think the crowd will find helpful. It's called CFLA Many Names. Okay. And there's Dr. Honorado talking about sex. This guy was obsessed with sex. He was obsessed with teenage sexuality.
Really?
Yeah, that's all he did. He just talked about
Obstetrician and gynecologist will be guest speaking a sex education program for mothers and their teenage daughters.
I mean,
Thursday,
I was told that
April
this wasn't
30th.
that unusual, that obstetricians did this, but I don't know. I mean, he seemed to do it quite a lot. So there you go. But go to see it. It's after number 19. And then we're gonna do CFLA Many Names, and then we're gonna go to 19, and then we'll see if we have time for more stuff.
Let's see here. CFLA 15.
It's after 19.
There we
so
go.
There we go.
We got it.
Okay, now this I'm gonna put up on my Twitter just because it has a ton of names that people could look up. Okay, a cocktail party benefit will be held by Catholics for Latin America at the Sheraton East Hotel in Manhattan. Proceeds. So it has all the names of everybody involved. All right. So you can see if there's anybody interesting in there. But notice how, of course, the last name on there is Dr. and Mrs. Robert Honorado. So again, because they were one of the people who were the founders of this whole thing. So the reason, again, so one more thing, and then we'll talk about where we're going to go from here. But number 19 is kind of interesting as well. Someone sent this to me, and I thought this was extremely strange. Okay, so read the caption. This is in 180 Hudson Terrace, the House of Catholics for Latin America.
German spies.
reportedly watched troop movements on the Hudson River during World War II from this third floor window of the mansion at 180 Hudson Terrace. The building now houses the Catholics for Latin America. So you have German spies. There it ties in with your potential Nazis there. Actually, not even potential. If they're spying, they're Nazis. So now you have Nazis. Right. If you have Nazis now on North Broadway at 180 Hudson Terrace in the same house that eventually became Catholics for Latin America, where I am alleging that that's what's the group that was importing the kids in to be used as rituals. So I don't know, folks. Here's my Twitter. I'm going to be putting all this stuff up in dribs and drabs starting this evening for you guys to check out. So I think that we are on to something here. I think that we have discovered something independently from Maury Terry. But it just so happens that our research and Maury Terry's research were hand in hand. So I consider CFLA extremely, extremely important. And I think that this is definitely not the last we should hear about them. So crowd, do your thing, right? Send me any information you find. Not all of it will be helpful. Some of it may be. So I'll vet it all out and we'll take a look. So Jason, I wanted to also talk about the dead dogs, but maybe we don't have time. It's up to you.
Well, I think we've got so much to talk about and so many shows to do in the future. We're at 1 hour and 15 minutes, and some sort of programming problem prevented this from going out live on Crowdsource the Truth forever. So I want to get that out. But let's just recap what we've been talking about today, Manny, because again, I want to go back. I've spent so much time today just digging into this thing. I want to remember exactly how I got to that and why I felt that it was connected to Catholics for Latin America. Where did that become Catholic Relief Services? I think that was Tom Hollywood that I got that from.
Well, Tom Hollywood is Catholics Relief Services. Right. That's number 18. If you want to go back to 18, he's Catholic Relief Services, but he has the same name as Tom Hollywood for Catholics for Latin America.
Right.
So what we have to do as a crowd is we have to connect Catholics for Latin America. It became Techo.
We have to see if there is a connection. We want to.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. We have to find if there is a connection between CFLA, which became Techo, which then does Techo still exist, or did that become Catholic Relief Services? Are these two Catholic Relief Services and CFLA, are they completely unaffiliated? And if they are, what's up with having two deputy chair parties?
What the hell is this? Because look at the location is 440 San Joaquin, Santiago, Chile, but I don't know if this is it. I just Googled Techo Foundation. It says it's about the nonprofit organization.
Well, go to the history.
Un Techo para Chile.
1997.
Was founded in 1997. So this doesn't seem like it.
But Techo was one of the first people in Haiti, it said there.
Yeah, I mean, there's just enough weirdness around all of these things about who the hell has... listen, maybe the guy's name is James Bond. For me personally, if I was his age and in the professional world and my name was James Bond, I might be like, J. Robert Bond or something, whatever the guy's middle name is.
Yeah. I mean, I have enough problems with Grossman, but...
Right. If you want to be taken seriously, that's a bit of a joke name. I mean, it's one thing...
Agreed.
If he's,
These names just don't sound real. These groups, in light
of
that...
To be fair, he's old enough that he might have gotten that name prior to the popularity of the character. But now, today, in 2021, I feel like you might not... Maybe at a cocktail party you introduce yourself like that?
Yeah, it would be very awkward because the jokes would ensue. I mean, absolutely. So we have definitely some whispers of funny business going on here.
Wait a minute. So here's actually Techo Foundation. And this looks exactly like the website. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, that's says
the one from
Techo
before.
Foundation Torres. So they're saying they collaborated with Techo, organization in Latin America and the Caribbean that seeks to overcome the situation of poverty. It sounds a lot like that other Techo.
Yeah, I think this is Fundación Torres, which is then partnering with Fundación Familia Torres is now partnering with Techo in this.
Wouldn't it be kind of odd, Manny, if there were just two separate Latin American Catholic charities that were run by guys named Tom Hollywood? That alone is a remarkable coincidence.
I think that's that brings us out of the realm of coincidence and into the realm of some sort of spydom that they did not want people to uncover and they did not want people to look at. And it just so happened that Maury Terry was into this, and just from one little article in a Yonkers newspaper, my spidey senses went up big time.
Okay, so now we've got this Techo Foundation with an EIN. Now, the other thing we can do is if we go to something like Open Corporates and start looking up these guys, let's just do that real quick.
Sure.
And see if this person, Tom Hollywood, is in fact associated with any of these things. So anybody can do this, you know? I mean, if you've watched Sunday with Charles and you've seen the different stuff. So let's look for officers, and let's type in Thomas Hollywood. There's kind of a lot of guys. Mr. G's Lounge, Arc Carpentry. Let's see if we see Techo in here. I don't see it.
I don't see no Techo.
Nothing for Catholic. All right, let's go back here and let's find just Techo.
So what do you? So basically, I'm sorry. What
Thomas Hollywood does for? What does Thomas Hollywood do for Techo?
I'll look it up right here, real quick. Deputy Chief of Party at Catholic Relief Services. Deputy Chief of Party.
Oh, Catholic Relief Services. So here's the Techo Foundation in New York, nonprofit.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So do they still exist? Where do they have an address?
Well,
1990.
registry page.
When were they incorporated?
So now what we want to do is we want to go to the New York State NY Charities Bureau. And let's just go back and get their.
So basically, what are we doing here? If this CFLA was on the up and up, and Tom Hollywood was on the up and up, they would have public records, easily accessible. You know, it seems like
be. I mean, sometimes these things are tricky to use, and also when we're dealing with, sometimes they'll have like Techo Foundation. And Techo Foundation Inc. and without a comma and with a comma. There's a lot of ways. So by the way, when I just put in...
It's like they're identity duplexing with corporate names even.
Correct. So even if we just search for Techo, American Fringe of... There is no Techo.
There is no Techo.
Registered with the state attorney general. So this is a problem right away. Because this thing says it's active and it's a domestic nonprofit in New York. But for some reason, just looking up Techo, we get nothing. This is the New York State charity. I mean, this is where you search for this stuff, unless I'm doing something wrong. I mean, it contains the word Techo. It should find that.
Right. I mean, I would just like to find records of CFLA. It seems
Haven't
like that's
found any of that.
Yeah, it seems like that's a ghost organization, and just judging from their property records where they're trying to obfuscate, tear, hide, not put information in, it seems to me like this might be a classic CIA shell dummy corporation.
I think a cutout is an accurate,
right.
Right.
They're using
Chicky Rogue is saying it sounds very cutout-ish.
Yeah. Hey, Chicky. I'll give a shout out to Chicky.
If we're looking into GuideStar, I looked at GuideStar briefly, and I mean, you know, these tools are basically as detailed as GuideStar. It just confirmed that the Techo Foundation Inc. is linked to that logo that we saw on the website. So again, Manny, I mean, this is not conclusive. However, when you've investigated 3, 4, 5, a dozen foundations, and we see, because there's something else I wanted to show you about this thing. When we go back to their 990, And again, there's differences with how religious organizations file these things. They
So
have
this is Catholic
exemptions and-
Relief Services. This is the new Tom Hollywood's. Right.
right? When you look at this, James Bond has signed it, but the preparer has not. And that is not the way that's supposed to be done.
Yeah. It's just
So
something's
that's
weird.
interesting. And it even says Catholic Relief Services is a 501c3 USCCB, whatever that stands for. It's a 501c3 tax-exempt organization as a result of its affiliation with the Catholic Church. As a qualifying religious organization, completion and filing of Form 990 is not required. So I don't
What
have
a
a good
great-
explanation as to why they did that.
Yeah, and
But-
what a great, and if it's not required, then obviously religious foundations are a great way to do things that you want to keep secret.
Well, and I mean, when you start going into things, again, I discussed this with Charles briefly, and just even having a moment to talk with him about something like this is like, getting access to
Yeah,
one of the
of
biggest
course.
experts in this field available. And he said that it has a lot of the hallmarks. It needs more research to make any kind of definitive statement, but
Right.
huge travel expenses, third-party contractors that are being paid millions per year. I think we had
Right.
Deloitte Consulting getting $12 million for software consulting. Sounds like a lot to me for a tax-exempt organization that's helping poor people in, what do they need software to the tune
Yeah.
of $12 million?
Yeah. I could
in
run the
Latin America.
organization on my PC.
It just seems very strange.
I think the long and short of it, Jason, is that I think that we have stumbled upon, quite accidentally, but we have stumbled upon, or maybe this is the universe again guiding my hand, but we've stumbled on, in my opinion, to a major unknown story of the Son of Sam saga. And this story, of course, is who supplied the kids. They couldn't kill local kids from Yonkers. They couldn't do that. These kids would have been missed.
Let's just look at some of this for a second, Manny.
Yeah.
Management, $27 million. Legal, $583,000. Accounting, $715,000. $12,000 in lobbying. Professional fundraising, almost $700,000. Investment management fees, $559,000.
Office expenses, $25 million for office expenses.
That is insane. This is one of the ones that Charles called out. He said that's like paper clips and crap.
Yeah, that's insanity.
$19 million on
31
information
million?
technology. $31 million on travel. So this is not normal.
I don't think any of this is normal. I think that we've stumbled upon a major story here, and I don't know where it's going. Again, this is all new to me, to Jason, to you
I
guys in the
surprised you
crowd.
with this.
You did, and and it was just as cool as you said it was going to be. But I definitely don't think we've answered any questions. I don't think we're gonna for a little while. I think that these people have covered their tracks massively. But I'm going with this allegation. I believe it in my heart. I know that doesn't mean anything, but where'd the kids come from? Kids were killed in rituals in Van Cortlandt and Untermeyer Park. They couldn't have been local kids of the local, hey, Johnny, let me have your kid for the night. Hey, yeah, Tommy, can I borrow your kid? It just didn't happen. You had to get untraceable kids. And John Carr himself told Brother John in 1972 that they were using untraceable kids that nobody would ever miss. Sounds like a perfect thing that CFLA might have been doing. And why was Maury interested in CFLA? We're hoping to find that out. I think he was interested in it for the same reason I am, but we're hopefully going to find that out. So anyway, I think that's pretty much it for CFLA, Jason, unless you have anything to add.
Well, I think that's it for today, but we're going to revisit this, and I'm going to keep digging into the book. I appreciate Maury Terry, but again, I find it very strange that in his own book, he's telling us that, John Carr was not identified by his dental records. His head was practically blown off, so he couldn't be visually identified. There were scars on his fingers that weren't seen in the autopsy photos.
He was
all kinds of
things. He was a major drug user. His blood was clean.
His lungs, right?
Lungs
and
were
they
no
said that he
damage.
smoked cigarettes and pot, and his lungs had no damage. To me, if I were writing the book, I would say, look, I didn't personally examine the body, but this is a monumental collection of evidence that leads to the only possible logical conclusion being that this was not the body of John Carr. And frankly, I think there is a lot of evidence that causes me to believe that the entire Son of Sam death cult was very, very dedicated to covering the tracks of the actual murderers. The other thing I read about in the book is that they're talking about how David Berkowitz left the door to his car open where the letter was found, which included on it, as you pointed out. I specifically chose the David Berkowitz version of the sigil to show over this house because I think that,
he drew it wrong.
Right, he drew it wrong. And Berkowitz, in the book, they're talking about his interrogations where sometimes he's helpful, sometimes he's not, sometimes he's telling them things, and then he says, I lied about that. Then he says, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then sometimes Maury draws these conclusions like he did with the body of John Carr that just make no sense. And then Michael Carr dies in a Buick that Detective Sonati said, no skid marks. He just drove a Buick into a thing at 75 miles an hour. Who the hell would do that?
Yeah, the whole thing is so freaking strange. At this point, it's like I said, I have to almost scrap everything and start thinking of the SOS case in a different light. I'm not there yet, but boy, as I learn more and more, I'm really I'm just saying, what the hell was this? Did it actually even happen? Like, I know people got shot, but was this all just a big psyop? I mean, I don't know. I like I said, I don't know. I mean, we have groups like CFLA, we have Dr. Robert Honorato, we have the 2 dead kids, we have Brother John, we have Karen Wallstrom. So something was definitely happening in Yonkers from the 1950s to the 70s. But we just need to really, really figure this all out. And I gotta say, I'm having a blast doing it. I love every second of doing this, and I really hope that the crowd does too. And I just want to say to everybody in the audience, thanks for hanging in there with us, and thanks for being so supportive and so cool. It's so appreciated. You can't even imagine.
And I want to make sure that people know they can follow Manny on Twitter at Grossman Manny, and he's just constantly posting lots of useful information, not just about gardening fundamentals, but he gives you the links to where you can find our live streams, where you can find his past videos. He's also posting lots of evidence on there and other information that is related to what's going on in New York and the United States, related to COVID-19 and all this kind of stuff. People can also subscribe to the Manny Grossman YouTube channel and catch up on this series. If you haven't seen Manny's videos, he's interviewed Detective Sonati, he's interviewed Carl Denaro, he's been going all around to the locations where these murders took place in a way that really, this is the other reason why people are captivated by this, Manny. You can write a book about this, you can make a docudrama, but I haven't seen anybody else going to the places and just looking at the sites. And I'll tell you what, anytime I've ever done that, when I went with David Hawkins to BBC Broadcasting House in London, we saw so many things that you just can't see on Google Earth and photographs from 1976. So now that my car is fixed, if you will have me, I'd like to join you in Untermeyer Park and go on some of these investigations to try and hone in on some of the symbols, because I think they cannot resist having their symbols on stuff.
They love their symbols and they love their numbers. It's like an obsession. So the answer is a wholehearted hell yes, Jason. We're going to set it up, and we're going to come up with an epic episode for the crowd.
Absolutely. And I also want to make sure that people go and visit MannyGrossman.com. You can contact Manny and you can learn everything you're going to need to learn about gardening in your own home, or all the way on up to becoming a professional landscaper. If you're sitting around your house looking for something to do, certainly gardening, growing your own food, it's very relaxing, and it's something that I would like to get into.
I'll
However,
teach you, Jason.
I have no dirt here.
Well, you'll come out with me one day. I'll teach you. Gardening, I always tell people, gardening is the easiest thing to do. It's the most satisfying way to make a living. And I always tell the world, hey, we don't need any more public relations people. We don't need any more media analysts. We don't need
Lawyers.
any more lawyers. We don't need any more judges or any of these people. What we really need is more gardeners, and there is a lot of work out there for you. And of course, once you learn how to grow your own food, you're on your way towards independence, which I think we're all going to really, really need to know more about in the coming years, because this New World Order is not done with us. I'm sure they have their next plan afoot, and we have not heard the last of these people. So we got to start preparing, and we got to start coming together as a tribe, folks. All right, and that's pretty much it, Jason.
Absolutely, Manny. And I'm going to continue reading The Ultimate Evil and looking into all of this
Definitely.
stuff. We'll be back next week with another episode in the footsteps here of the Son of Sam. I want to remind people they can support Crowdsource the Truth by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And also you can subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth 5. Crowdsource the Truth Forever is back in action. My mistake prevented this live stream. I don't know why. I'm looking at it. It should have gone. I'll get it up there so everybody can see it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and have a great night, everybody.